Hi, welcome back. Today, let me take you through just a few ways to communicate the five purposes. We've been talking about them. We've established what the five purposes are. We've established how important it is for everybody in the church to know the five purposes, in which case, you can't just teach it in one class and then forget about it, because constantly, everywhere you look in your church, in the environment of your community, there needs to be that constant communication of the purposes. So what are the different ways we can communicate the five purposes so that everybody's learning at every level? Let me give you 5 ways. These are not the only 5. You can think of many other ways to do it, but here are 5. Number 1 is to use slogans. When you use slogans or sayings, you are often kind of pushing out those and reminding people about those purposes. Like, for instance, in my church, I use the phrase, love Jesus, love like Jesus. Love Jesus and love like Jesus. You know, your relationship with God, your relationship with people, and it kind of all binds in together, just like the Great Commission and the Great Commandment. So we use slogans. You could make them up, you could find them online, you could use ones that are already there, but slogans are short, quick, and you keep saying it over and over again. Use it in your sermons, use it in your bulletins, so that constantly people are reminded. It's like a catchphrase. All right. A second great one is symbols. Symbols are good because they're not a word, they're a picture, and pictures are better than words. You can remember words, but a picture carries with it meaning. You could draw it out, you could put it in different places, you can use it as your WhatsApp ID, you could, in different ways, immediately you are able to identify that ministry or that work or that purpose, right? So there's a friend of mine in Russia, Moscow, who created his own symbols for his church, and then there are the original ones that Pastor Rick Warren and the others have used, and there are others who have designed their own. You could design your own, and anything that you have to do or want to communicate, you could do that. But right now we're talking about the 5 purposes. So each of the 5 purposes has a icon or a graphic or a symbol that says, yeah, that's worship or that's evangelism. And then it kind of just always you're remembering all 5, and you're not over emphasizing on any one of them, which is what this whole thing is about. It's about balance, right? Number 3, of course, is scriptures. Every Sunday, every small group, every scripture teaching occasion, you are constantly hammering out one of the 5 purposes. You're staying within the 5 purposes and ensuring that you're balancing teaching of the scriptures within the purposes right throughout the year. So you've got slogans, love Jesus, love like Jesus. You've got symbols, you've got scriptures. Stories is your 4th way of doing it. Stories is an S word for testimonies. You could bring people up under the different purposes, whether worship or evangelism or discipleship or fellowship. Bring people up and let them give testimony of what God is saying. And then when they finish the testimony, you can say, that was a testimony on worship, or that was a testimony of evangelism. And you're constantly hammering out all 5 purposes to ensure. So when you get people to start telling their stories, writing their stories, narrating their stories, even Instagram has figured that out, and others have figured it out. Now they call it stories, and they put it out there. Everybody knows the power of a narrative, the power of a story. So that's number 4. And finally, everybody likes numbers. So specifics is your 5th one. Specifics is where people actually get, that many people have joined our church, or that many small groups have gotten started, or so many people are struggling with this particular problem. Specifics really help us move in the direction of one of the 5 purposes. And when you see and look at facts or numbers, it really grounds and gives you a kind of credibility in that area. That doesn't mean you have to keep track of absolutely everything, but it does help in terms of validating what's happening in each of the different purposes. It also gives you an understanding and it helps you with the examination of whether all 5 purposes are being given equal attention. Figures and facts are a good way to keep track of that. So those are the 5 slogans. You could use symbols, definitely teach scriptures, incorporate stories into your services and into your gatherings, and finally use specifics. Specifics also add to that. So those are some ways. Write to me if you've got a few more on those and different creative ways of communicating the purposes of God. I'd love to add a few to these and learn from them myself. we're trying some stunts in our own church as well, and let's see how it goes. So comment or write to me. Tell me what do you do and how do you get the purposes across to your congregation. All right.